that covers a number of areas, ICT being one of the areas. Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
Right, thanks.
My name is Danson Mushemi. I'm Chief Executive Officer and founder of JamboPay. JamboPay is an electronic payment service provider that helps or enables governments and businesses and individuals to collect or receive payments over mobile, over web, and over physical agency points and banks in several African countries.
Okay, all right, welcome all. I was talking to Charles earlier saying, you know, he has a dream job for many people, and I'm sure that you all will represent a good, you know, portion of the ICT sector watching and perhaps might have questions for him. I don't know who wants to go first. Ladies?
I'll go first. Okay, I have two questions.
Yes.
The first one being, this is about the Kenya ICT policy.
Yes.
I think it was reviewed recently, early this year, I think.
Yes.
And so the question is, what steps is Google taking in order to influence this policy at the government level?
Yes.
Yeah.
So that's your first question?
Yeah, that's the first question. The second question is about the outreach programs, and I'll break down this into two.
Yes.
So the first one being, what's Google's contribution to women in tech, especially, or rather specifically the ones in the rural areas? Because we find most of these women, most of the women are encouraged to pursue other programs as opposed to the programs covered by STEM.
Yes.
So I feel the passion in technology in these girls needs to be encouraged.
Yes.
So what is Google doing about it?
These are fantastic questions, and I probably don't have enough time to actually cover the two areas. So I'll make the first one quite brief and say, as Google, we work very closely with governments, and not just in Kenya but across the world, to ensure that we are working to create policies and regulatory frameworks that really open up the technology space and the internet, for a couple of reasons. One, we believe in access of information across the board. So it's really critical for a lot of people to have access to information so that it can democratize the way people work, the way people read, and even sort of education. So when you think about the ICT policy, and it has quite a number of things, everything from regulating OTTs, which I think some of you work in that space, especially around payments, to content and how that content is actually released, and most importantly, as we look at what we're calling the fourth industrial revolution, which is all about data and technology, is how do you actually ensure that you curb cyber terrorism, right? And that data that you put up is fully protected. So we're very engaged to work with government on across all those different areas to ensure that we both contribute from best practice knowledge that we've seen work across other parts of the world, and really ensure that it's also localized enough to ensure that it takes into consideration the needs of this country and across Africa, because it needs to be relevant. So hopefully that covers that. And we have someone, Michael Murungi, who's our head of policy, who engages consistently with government across East Africa to ensure that that happens. On the women in tech, that is something that I'm incredibly passionate about. I genuinely believe that, one, again, not to dwell on the elements of democratization of information, is that the internet actually creates a leveling playing field for people to access their dreams. How does that work? If a child in Wajir can be able to access the internet in a fast, efficient manner with information, they can be able to read research and content that someone in Washington, D.C. has the same access to. So what we say at Google is that we need to ensure that information is for all, not just for people in New York or in D.C. or in Seattle, but even in more remote parts of Africa. And we're doing quite a number of things. We work here very closely with different organizations that are pushing developers and working with developers. So we have an outreach program around that. I know, for instance, we worked in the last 2 months, we've done 3 major events, one around the progressive web apps, which is a greater way to that considers the lack of data speeds in Africa. So we created progressive web apps as a great platform for people to move and create those for their companies. The second thing we've done more recently is worked with developers to train them on Firebase, which I think for you, especially with apps, you know that is probably the most exciting thing that has happened in the recent past in terms of being able to analyze your data and utilize and reach and improve the way you reach your consumers. And then in South Africa, not too long ago, we had and sponsored Demo Africa. And again, that was a great platform for entrepreneurs such as yourself to go showcase and see what potential is there. And that's just one thing. The second thing is around women who code. That is something in a project that we consistently work and help drive, because we believe that women are the backbone of society, and there's so much research. You being in research, you understand all the impacts that drives. So we want to say that coding is not just for technology people or for programmers or developers. Any person can actually be able to code and improve the things that they're doing. Whether you're a fashion designer or a pure techie, you can use code to be able to improve the things that you do. Okay. So hopefully that answers your question.
Yeah. We'll move over to Paris.
Great, thank you. So I have two questions.
Yes.
As well. So
number with all
right. Yes. Yeah. So when do you see Google Ventures and Google Foundation really actively investing in African startups, and especially Google Foundation investing a lot in research and development? There's a lot of creativity in Africa. You've seen a lot of technologies that are coming out from our country itself.
Yes.
So when are you actively bringing Google Ventures and Google Foundation money here so that we can grow? The other question is around agriculture. I work in agriculture, and I know you guys have a lot of data. We are currently using satellite images to analyze farms, to understand soil and understand farmers better. That's something you've done in you've done a lot of work using Lancet. So when will we see those technologies that you have being localized and being used to solve complex challenges that we have in Africa, especially in agriculture? That's something I haven't seen yet from Google.
Yes.
Yes.
Again, good questions. On the first one around Google money, there's plenty of Google money in Africa as we speak. I think just the most recent investment that we announced was on Lake Turkana wind.
The energy project.
Yes. So we just put in quite a significant amount of money in that. And the reality is that we're consistently evaluating opportunities whereby we can be able to invest. And those opportunities need to touch on a couple of different things. One is something that can tap into the Google ecosystem that can help us scale what we're doing and actually become faster. Two, something that is so innovative that really pushes the boundaries, and that is something that we're always looking at. And three, something that just really changes people's lives, right? So those are different things that we're constantly working on. And to sort of throw out a name there, John Kimani, who heads up our developer relations, is someone who's consistently evaluating these opportunities and sharing them with us, both internally and all the way to Mountain View, for us to look at opportunities that we can be able to invest in. So Google money is here already. Yes. On the second point around data, what we're always looking at is Google does a great job around open internet. So we have our mission, as you know, is to organize the world's information and make it universally accessible and useful. So we are constantly looking at collecting all the data possible and then putting it out in a more open platform so that people can be able to tap into it, either through APIs. Maps is something that we're constantly, you can actually plug on and be able to utilize. And then, you have the other Google apps or suite of apps that you can be able to pull in. So I think it's on a case-by-case basis. And on the agricultural one specifically, I do not have a specific example whereby people are using it that I know of. But on the maps end, we have quite a lot of that we already have people plugged in. And I think most recently, there are about 3 new cab companies here in Kenya who have all plugged into that and are utilizing it consistently.
Yeah.
Johnson, we'll go over to you.
mine also, I'll try to remain consistent, have two. One is that you mentioned that you have Google Money around.
Yes.
What is your strategy around the wallet, the Google Wallet?
Yes.
As you know, we are in electronic payment system. I would like to know your strategy around that in Africa.
Yes.
And probably lessons learned in your Beba Pays attempt last time.
Yes.
That's first question. Question two is around that Google is an amazing company that has focused on getting to collect and organize this data and make it available in an organized format. What is your view on data sovereignty? That we are in a sovereign country. You probably are aware that if you took an organism, even if it's a spider from Kenya, to export that you'd need to have maybe license from KEFIS, because that's Kenya's resource. Now, anything else, including plants like napier grass, you'd need to do the same. But when it's data, and data, I still now feel, not that I still, it's regulated now that we have our data, especially government data. What is your view on data sovereignty, especially in relation to government sensitive data, where you host that because you cloud-based company? Those are the two questions.
Okay. Starting off with the first one around the mobile wallet, it's something that we're constantly reviewing and looking at how we can engage. As you know, most Africans are not on credit cards. A very small minority are banked. So we're constantly saying, how can we be able to reach more Africans to be able to transact online? So the closest thing that we're working on at the moment is around telcos. We just made an announcement in South Africa around direct carrier billing, whereby we can be able to integrate the Play Store with mobile wallets and people pay through that. And we're constantly looking at more people to come on board, engage with us, so that we can push those initiatives forward. So that is one. On Beba Pay was around two elements. I think it's important to say we wanted to spur the digital ecosystem. At the time when Beba Pay came into the market, there was literally very little digital activity outside M-Pesa, and around the transportation space, actually there really wasn't anything. So we wanted to spur that, and since then, I think your company has come into the mix. You have something around that. You have My 1963, KCB has Prepare, and there's a lot more companies coming into it. So we look at ourselves as either one, we can own everything that we do, or two, we can spur the market to enable new entrants to come into the market to be able to push that. And I believe that we've been able to achieve that with the Beba Pay product that we had in the market. And as you know, what we did with that product is that it was a partnership with Equity Bank, and they transitioned a lot of those customers into another digital payment service, which is MasterCard. I think you know that. On the data sovereignty, we value that, but I think it's really critical for all of us in the tech space, and sitting around a panel of techpreneurs, it's really important for us to shift our mindset from borders and really understand that the world is now flat. Right, and a couple of my predecessor loves to talk about WhatsApp, so I think I will honor him by mentioning that. When you think about WhatsApp has over 1.2 billion users every single day. So if I ask you, where do you think that data should sit?
Well, I mentioned there are certain, for example, let me ask you a question. You have probably your health or your ID's details,
yes,
or your driving license behavior,
yes,
which is a government oligo systems. You have maybe some civil cases, and how? Yes. Where do you think that data should sit? I
think it goes back to my earlier point around really ensuring consumer data protection. Right, and the ICT policy really has some key points around that. So it doesn't matter where the data sits. Right, I think we should move our mindset from that and really think about
let me finish.
And think about, is my data secure and in secure hands? You talked about the medical data, for instance. So what's happening today? You have people who, for instance, I've lived in about 5 different countries across my lifetime. Where should my medical data sit? Should it sit in the US? Should it sit in London? Should it sit in Dubai, in Kenya or South Africa? It's all my data, right? And I deserve to be able to access that information at any single particular point. So I think what's really critical is to ensure that you have a very clear, transparent understanding of who has your data, how that data is being used, and if it's secure. If those three things are actually covered, then where it sits is neither here nor there, because there's a lot of fluidity in terms of the way people are moving from one country to another, from the way different organizations and governments are engaging. And so it's really ensuring that your data is used and protected so that you know that no one can actually be able to use that data in a manner that's not consistent with what you've given them. And for instance, when you think about Google, we give you the options. So if you go to Gmail or google.com/myaccount, you can be able to look at all the data that Google collects on you and how it's used. And you can then determine where you want that data to be shared or not, right? How you want that data to be used or not. So I think that, for me, is the way I look at the data issue and consider that we need to be transparent to say, you as Danson, what is the data that's held and how is it being used and why?
Okay.
I think all right. No, I know you have another question. I want everyone else to be able to get another question in as well. So I'll come back to Beth. Did you have anything to add to your other question?
Not really, but just to echo his point, I think when it comes to data, it all trickles down to proper implementation of the policies. We might have the best policies, but if they're not implemented very well, then it's pretty much useless. Yeah. So I think the most important thing is the implementation of the policies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You also brought up the issue of women in tech, in the tech space in Kenya. I don't know how you feel that that space is currently. Are you satisfied with the representation of women in your business?
No, okay, I must say most of the aspects in our lives are powered by technology. And I feel the women are not well represented in the roles that make technology happen. So I just think the passion for technology in these girls and the women, especially in the rural areas, needs to be encouraged. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Paris, coming back to you, bringing in the aspects of agriculture and the business that you have. Do you have any more questions for Charles?
Yeah, I mean, we'll talk separately on the side. Yeah. But one of the key questions I wanted to ask, I was very excited when you guys overlaid GTFS data on Google Maps to help people who use matatus to get to their destinations.
Yes.
That was a very exciting project.
Yes.
So I want to see more partnerships that are very localized and that target or reach the people that don't necessarily have access to Google services on their smartphones. So think about the farmers that I work with that have simple mobile phones. How are they going to benefit from Google? My grandmother, who is a farmer, how is she going to benefit from Google? Because it's benefiting me, I'm getting knowledge, but how is she benefiting from that to improve her farming activities? So a lot on using your Landsat, understanding rainfall, understanding a lot of the data that you have to build a standard KYC so that we can drive more services to the people that deserve it at the bottom.
One thing I'd like to add on that is that Google cannot be able to do everything by itself. We have to work very closely with different companies and different organizations such as yourselves in terms of partnerships. I think a great example of a really successful partnership that's ongoing right now is the Digital Skills for Africa initiative that we just announced a few months back in April. And we committed to train 1 million Africans across Africa, not just in municipal councils or big urban areas, but for me, I'm passionate to see that, for instance, in Kenya, that we reach all 47 counties. And through partnerships, we're working closely with government, we're working with the Ministry of ICT. You have all these technical training centers across every single county. We want to disseminate that technology and that knowledge of information to all those different counties. And I think, to your point, ensure that a girl who's in a rural area understands what the opportunity is around technology. And one of the things I always say is that you cannot be what you don't know. Right? So the first step, and all of us around this table, and especially organizations such as Royal Media, it's on us to really teach the youth, the women, the girls, what is possible around technology, what things you can be able to do, and what opportunities digital offers for you. And that means really propagating that information to the most remote parts of the country, and then working with government and working with other private organizations to really push out that knowledge, ensure that connectivity reaches those particular places, last mile issues are resolved around access, working with OEMs to ensure that mobile phone costs are coming down so more people can afford smartphones, and really make life easier and more opportunistic for all Kenyans as a whole and all Africans as a whole.
Yeah, I do feel like everyone here needs to have a private conversation with you afterwards, especially Danson. Do you have any quick final remarks on the state of ICT?
Well, we look, as the entrepreneurs, you look up to Google. Google is one of those companies from a business perspective that we seen grow. They've been quite adaptive and innovative, and stuck to its objectives from the onset. So kudos for that. We only hope that you can also work and create forces with local entrepreneurs to get them skills from your learnings, especially the top entrepreneurs and yourselves.
Yes.
And at Google. But back to the earlier question, I was driving this to that we would like to see in future Google considering maybe having a data center here in this region, Africa, maybe in Kenya or East Africa, or partnership with the existing data centers here or infrastructure providers, because we have those concerns in government circles. We have participated in government tenders that they will tell you, where do you host your data? That's why I was asking you that. If you host your data outside the country, you're not able to. And we understand the concerns. They are real concerns, because where data sits, if your data center sits in the US, that country there, the government there has jurisdiction over that entity there. So it could be a concern to other governments elsewhere. But all in all, I think it's good work. There's a lot to learn as entrepreneurs from the journey of Google. Your openness is one of the very good things that we all we would like to have in our organizations, and the growth has been tremendous. We are dependent on Google on so many things. Thank you.
I think my challenge to you is ambition. And I know you mentioned that we've stuck to our guns and really had a great growth trajectory. And as entrepreneurs, I would challenge you that on the onset, you really set your sights at an almost impossible ambition. And that is going to drive everything that you do and your ambitions. We have something that at Google we call moonshots. And moonshots are basically initiatives which can solve problems so big that affect at least 100 million people, right? And that can be solved through technology. And that's the kind of thinking that we need to set, whether you're a business in Kenya starting off, or a business in a first world US, UK type country. We need to really set our ambitions really high, because think about, again, going back to WhatsApp. WhatsApp was started by 2 individuals from Ukraine, worked in the US, and were broke for most of the time when they were building it after they quit